You're in Nashville, correct?
I'm in Nashville, yeah.
And how are things in Nashville? The last person I spoke to in Nashville a few days ago, he told me he was just like a couple of blocks away from where the big explosion happened. So it's like, holy crap.
Oh wow, yeah. I don't know, man. It's kind of dreary in general here in the U.S., but it's looking up.
Yeah.
So it's weird. When I have this terrible habit, when I wake up in the morning, I'll look at my phone like most people. But I try not to like click on Facebook or my Gmail or any of that stuff right away. I kind of see if I have any texts, and then I'll look at the news first.
Right.
And it's gotten so weird. So for the past, few years, I've gotten to where almost every morning I wake up, there was crazy news. It was just one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it's weird. The last week I've been waking up and I'm like, well, there's really nothing exciting going on. This is kind of nice. It's like normal.
That's a relief.
I hope it stays that way.
Well, we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed. It seems to be kind of steering in that direction. I think everybody breathed a collective sigh of relief when the inauguration happened. So, without incident.
Sure.
So that was interesting. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the album "Forever Worse Better," which it was released a little while ago, right?
Yep, October 9th, I believe it was.
Right.
So.
And what was the process like of releasing it back then? Probably not much different than if you released it today.
Yeah. It's so funny because we thought that things would be back to normal by now. It was weird. We finished the album. God, we got funding for it with the small label we're on, and all that stuff. Kind of early summer, right. And we just thought no one knew what to do then, right. And we just kind of waited, and then we just said, well, you can only wait on something so long. So yeah, we just decided to do it in October. I think it was a pretty good decision. We had a good weekend where we weren't really competing with the Chris Stapletons or the Jason Isbells of the world.
Right.
But I will say, I think COVID had less to do with, I think we've definitely had a great response. I mean, we've been on the charts for quite a long time here in America, and it's been really cool. But I do think as far as the amount of people really learning about you and your new album and your band and stuff, I think what hurt us more than COVID was actually the election cycle.
Right, yes.
That took up everyone's energy. I mean, no one cared about like discovering new things or something. Everyone was absorbed totally and utterly in the election, myself included.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there is that, and it was even here. We were all paying attention very closely to what was going on.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So So tell me about the making of the record. When were the songs written? When was it recorded?
Let's see here. When did we start recording? August of 2019 was when we started recording. So yeah, and we basically spent the fall doing it. We're at a place where I can't complain about our band really, or our career or whatever, if that exists. But we still have day jobs. It doesn't quite pay all the bills yet. So trying to, between day jobs and touring on the weekends, it took us the entire fall into the winter to finish the album. We did the bulk of it live in a really cool studio in Nashville called Sound Emporium. Cowboy Jack Clement used to own the place. It was like his studio, and quite a few records are still recorded there to this day. It's a fantastic studio. We did our second album there. So we do basically what I call the skeleton or the meat and potatoes. We get the bass and the drums and most of the acoustic guitars, and maybe if we're lucky, some electric guitars. And if we're lucky and we have some extra time, I'll hit the Hammond B3 and try to get some of that while we're there. That's the one cool thing about studios is they have, the nice piano and the Hammond B3, and we don't have that sitting around at home.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and then we just spent the rest of the fall doing overdubs.
Cool. Now you guys are a trio, so to fill out do you guys play everything yourselves? Do you bring other people in when you're recording? How does it work?
Well, it's interesting. We started off as like a folk duo, then we kind of became a full band. The interesting thing is that we aren't really a trio. We always play with a full band. It's just that we only have a trio of permanent members.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's kind of deceptive. We decided that maybe we shouldn't have put out photos like that anymore. maybe we should include the guys that go on the road with us, the drummer and the pedal steel player and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a full band. I mean, it's a full rock and roll show.
Very cool. Very cool. And of course, it must be frustrating having a full band and doing a full rock and roll show and no rock and roll shows happening after the record came out. So how have you dealt with that?
I dealt with it by writing a whole new album. I mean, there's been a lot of free time, and we were actually supposed to start recording last weekend for the next album. But some sort of financial hangups kept that from happening. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The album has a lot of sort of angst and frustration and some dark romantic periods, things like that. But as soon as I actually started dating somebody on New Year's Eve, 2020, 2019 and 2020. So it's been weird. Other than life not being normal, not being able to play shows, going without work and money for a while, things like that. I've been pretty much staying busy, just hanging out with the person I'm in love with and writing a lot. I mean,
there you go. Very cool. So you guys have been described as a Southern rock band, American Southern rock band. And of course, that may mean something different now than it did maybe when you were making the record, even because of all the stuff that's happened in the interim. Have you given that much thought?
No, not really. I mean, I'll take the sort of genre classification. It doesn't bother me at all because I love Southern rock. And yeah, that's it. I mean, you could have a whole podcast on just that and the sort of like socio whatever, like the socials of that as to whether the demographics, because when I think of classic rock, I think of music, and I don't necessarily think of like rebel flag waving like
gotcha.
Racists, you know what I mean? So, but I know that when other people hear the term Southern rock, they automatically think that. So it's a touchy subject, but I'll gladly take it. I love Leonard Skinner. I mean,
I don't say there's a big difference between. I mean, I'm from that era, the '70s. Leonard Skinner, Tom Petty, both Southern rock, but very similar. There's different approaches to it overall. Yeah,
I mean, I started playing music because I heard Freebird for the first time. That's what did it to me at 15 years old. I grew up in a very religious home and somehow had managed to grow up in Alabama without hearing Freebird. I don't know how that happened, but when I did hear it the first time, I immediately picked up a guitar and completely became obsessed with it. So I'm a big Skinner fan. Absolutely. I'm not necessarily a fan of the Confederate flag and things like that, but I sort of can separate the music from that.
Yeah. Although I will say, I can't imagine Skinner doing a song like the title track, Forever, Worse or Better. It seems to be much more kind of contemplative and reflective than anything that they would have done.
And get it up. You pull me into you like a river that runs forever.
There's some deep cuts in there.
Well, there's Simple Man, I guess.
There's one song in particular I love by Skinner. Not that I came here to talk about Skinner, but All I Can Do Is Write About It, which is sort of almost like a environmental song Ronnie's singing about. That's pretty. I like that. That's a pretty contemplative song, but I do understand where you were coming from for sure. We're definitely not Leonard Skinner, and it's interesting because as a young, when you're in your teenage years like I was, it was like classic rock was so big. A lot of rock and roll was really bad in the late 90s. It was like everything post Creed was pretty bad. You know what I mean? Like Creed was where it was like everything just changed when Creed got big, and that led us into the sort of like rap rock stuff and all that stuff. And I mean, granted, there was great college rock and indie rock going on at the time, and of course, great alt country and all that stuff. But being, you know, a teenager in the late 90s, I gravitated towards classic rock. But then as you get older, you get into the college rock, you discover country, you discover all these things. But what I was into for the recording of Forever Works Better was like I kind of had this sort of turnaround where I started listening to classic rock a lot more all of a sudden. And that definitely influenced the sound of this album.
Uh-huh. And do you still listen to a lot of classic rock, or are you kind of experimenting and looking around for other stuff these days?
I'd say right now I'm listening to a lot more sort of R&B. I've been listening to a lot more of the Muscle Shoals stuff. And,
right.
This I don't know why I'm in a love affair with really gritty bass and drums right now. I'm much more into rhythmic elements of music than the guitar.
Right. Well, you take it all back to the beginning, and it all comes together anyway. So
for sure,
it's all good stuff. Now, so what has the band been doing since you can't play out in the interim? You know, since the record's out up until at least this point in time.
Nothing. I mean, we all have our day jobs. We've had a couple of streams. I think people in general a little burnt out on live streams, so we haven't done too much of that. I've done a few by myself, and then we had two full band, full production ones that were fun, and it was really cool because we were able to actually have a real show and get to see each other. Which, I mean,
yeah.
The first time we saw each other, lockdown in America kind of really started. I don't know if it started there at the same time, but it was early March, and then we didn't see each other. We got together to like write some songs or play some music. I can't remember why we got together, three of us, but it was it was like almost 6 months later, and it was definitely an emotional experience, you know, seeing each other. Because I mean,
being a band is all about, I guess. And you guys spent a lot of time on the road, I'm assuming, before all this happened. So it must have been quite a lifestyle change to deal with.
It was. My favorite part about being in a band is actually not even the music. I love playing music, and I love playing live, and I love writing and recording and all that stuff. But I can't speak for the other guys. But my favorite part about being in a band is I'm a member of a club. You know, I got my best friends for life. So that to me outweighs all of the music, and it definitely makes it easy to put up with the negative parts of it too when you have your best friend. So yeah, that was really that was the hardest part for me. It wasn't not playing shows. It was not seeing them. It was not like being in this like group of people that, you know, it's like they're your gang, your club, and that was hard.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about your songwriting, if I can. I noticed there was kind of like a religious theme going through some of the things. You're singing about "Nail Me to the Cross," and there's there's "Rock of Ages" and things like that. And I think I read somewhere that you had grown up in a religious household, but you're not particularly thinking in those terms these days. But yet it seeps into your music. How do you deal with that?
I think I deal with it by by putting it in the music. I think you have your language.
Yeah.
And when that language is instilled in you at an early age, it comes out, especially with sort of metaphors and allegories and things like that. I mean, when I got in trouble as a kid, I mean, there were all kinds of punishments, but one of my least favorites would be like, you know, my parents would make me write like a Proverbs or a Psalms that had to do directly with what I did. And I would have to write it like, you know, write this Bible verse like 200 times in a row or something like that. And it's just like, oh, it was brutal. I still don't miss that. You know what I mean? I don't miss it at all. And I'm not religious. I'm agnostic. I believe in God, I think. And that's good enough for me. I think people can just live by the golden rule. And if you do that, then the whole world would be pretty damn awesome. But yeah, it's there. The language is there. It's instilled in me. And of course, it doesn't matter really if you grow up did you grow up Catholic, Rochester, New York?
No, I did not. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, so it was very Protestant.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you still had the same guilt. Like, I don't know what you believe, but if you leave the church, you still have a sense of, I don't know. It's just weird that sense because it's so tied to your family. I mean, you know that you aren't just leaving something for your own beliefs. You're also hurting family members that now think you're going to hell because
Right. Yeah.
they genuinely love you and want you to not go to hell. So
That's true.
it puts a strain on the family relationships. But I think that sort of like, never ending strain in that department. Yeah. I mean, it also creates a sort of fun to me to be able to, there's a freeing sense of being able to use biblical imagery in a tongue-in-cheek way.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. Like there's a song on the album called Help Me, Lord.
Yep.
And I don't know if most people know it, but I'm actually kind of being sarcastic. The whole song is sort of sarcastic. It's me admitting that I need help, sort of cosmically and universally, but like I'm sarcastically saying I don't need religion to do that for me.
Yeah. And that particular track it sounds like it was made to be played in a stadium. It has a guitar solo in it and all that. So it's got to be frustrating not to be standing in front of thousands of people somewhere and just cranking that out.
Well, I'll tell you whether it was COVID or not. It's frustrating to be at a small bar somewhere playing in front of 10 people and wanting to be playing in the stadium. we've played at amphitheaters and we've done it all. And we still have those nights where I wish I was in the stadium. Although the stadium sound does sound pretty bad.
Really?
Theaters definitely where it's at.
Yeah. Well, I've just kind of become aware of the fact that the sonic experience for the band can be very different than in the audience. You can be standing there, 10 feet away from the band thinking this sounds amazing. And the poor band, if they got a crappy mix and the monitors and all that, could be just like miserable the whole way through it.
Yeah. We had our first, last year we had our first, we've played some smaller amphitheaters, but we had our first big amphitheater in Nashville show. We were playing with, we were opening up for the Revivalists and Anderson East. And it was our first one like that. And we learned the hard way that it's a whole nother business to play that kind of thing. It's harder to get people's attention, the crowd. You can't have any dead time. You got to have something going at all times. If it's just like a kick, boom, 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 or like a something. And the sound was horrendous. I hated it. But I will say it was fun to be up on that big stage. And the coolest thing from a guitar player's perspective is you can turn your amp up pretty loud. And you can't do that at a club.
That's true. That is good fun. So you said you've been writing some songs since this album. What kind of turn has that taken? Is there anything revealing itself yet?
It's a lot happier music.
Well, that's good.
It's going to be an album about being in love and just having fun. And like I said, the sort of R&B, even though I'm not an R&B singer, or we're definitely not an R&B band, but that's sort of like just fun kind of groove thing. I think, and the last album took a lot to make. I mean, it was expensive to make. Mixing took a long time. Tracking took a long time. The lead up to release took a long time. It was pretty exhausting. And I knew this go around. I was like, we're just going to write. I've been naturally writing more like folk and just kind of fun and sort of in a garage rock sort of and pseudo R&B vibe, just easier, just get to it kind of music, And so the next album will be a lot more sparse and a lot groovier, I think.
Yeah. And are you going to be able to be in the same room and record it together, or are you going to have to come up with some alternative methods?
No, I mean, I think we'll be in the same room. It'll just depend on everyone's sort of how comfortable and the health level and stuff like that. One person's already had COVID and gotten over it, so it's like that's good that I'm not worried about them giving it to you. You know what I mean? But I'd say everybody involved is very. There are no science deniers in our group of people. So I think everybody's been pretty careful. So we'd feel pretty comfortable doing that. But we were actually supposed to record last weekend, but a little bit of the financing fell through. So
Right. But at least the songs are there, so that's always a plus.
that is a plus, man. I can't wait. I love recording too, and I specifically love trying to get a good drum sound. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I've been in a few studio situations where the drum sound was all we heard all day long. So
Yeah. It's funny because I told you the next one would be easier. Like that's part of it too. Just less mics, better mics, better gear, and less of them, and then that's all you need. That's all you need. You don't need 20 drum mics.
Nah. Sounds like a good plan. Well, sounds like you're doing well. Glad to talk to you. Thank you for talking to me. And we'll look for the next Happy album after Forever, Worse or Better.
All right. Sounds good, Marty. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. See you, man.